hello friends, and welcome to Ariel's Twilight Years, how to be a really old model. I'm at home this month, having been away for most of the month doing a lot of things. I've just started the process of purchasing another property for my property company. Book 2 things are happening, which is exciting. I just had a great big medical scare, which was resolved today, which is a relief. But I am very angry, and I'm going to talk about the thing that has made me very angry. Because, as many of you who follow my channel will be aware, I published my first book, Playing to Lose, which is a memoir, in August 2023 with Unbound. And I was very proud to work with them. When I wrote my book and started trying to find first a literary agent to represent it and then a publisher to publish it, I very quickly discovered that there is a stigma around the work I do when it comes to an industry as traditional in some ways as publishing. Of course, I knew that a job like mine is stigmatised to some degree by society generally, but given that Belle de Jour, Memoir of a Call Girl, had been published with such success back in, I think, 2001, kind of thought maybe they would be okay with that, given that similarly sexually frank books about sex work have been published. But it was very difficult and it was quite discouraging. And then I found Unbound, and their values seemed to align pretty well with mine. They seemed pretty progressive. They had worked with sex workers before. They'd published some books that I really liked, that I was definitely ideologically aligned with. And while I didn't feel like I needed a publisher specifically who was aligned with me, it certainly meant that when they accepted my book, I felt pretty confident that Unbound would be a good home for it. Unfortunately, that has transpired to not be the case, so I want to talk about that today. I've got quite a lot of detail to get through, so I'll try to be brief, and I will sum up with some information that I just very much hope will be useful to anyone starting out on their publishing journey, because if I could have watched this video that I'm making back in 2022 when I was looking for a publisher, it would have been hugely useful for me. As it was, I remember before I signed my contract with Unbound, I did Google their name to see if I could find any blog posts or YouTube videos about authors' experiences, and I didn't find anything negative at all, which was great. But now I wish that I had known what I know now. So disappointing. It's so disappointing to talk about. Anyway, my book needed to be crowdfunded, which most books by Unbound did need to. So I ran a crowdfunding campaign over a 5-week period. At the end of 5 weeks, my book was fully funded, so Unbound didn't need to put any money into the process of getting it to market. The reason that they did this, which was very unusual for a publisher, is so they could take risks on books that might not on paper look like a very commercial proposition. So the fact that I had a decent number of followers on Twitter and on YouTube, the fact that I already had a fan base, and the fact that I was not shy about fundraising, all of these things were very useful. So then we began the process of getting the book to market. My first surprise, and this did happen early on, was that although everyone I dealt with at Unbound was very pleasant to me and seemed very competent too, there was a surprisingly fast turnover of staff. At first I thought, oh, what bad luck I've had. My commissioning editor is leaving. But then the person who was in charge of crowdfunding also left. And as the process went on, and the whole process sort of took a year and a half, an awful lot of people left and were replaced. And I've never worked in publishing before, so I thought maybe this is normal. Maybe this is what happens. And maybe it is normal. But it was the first sign that something might have been awry. So I mention it here just in case it's useful for you if you're an author and you are looking at the behaviour of your publishing company. I loved everyone I was working with, and the process was great. I did invite the publisher. At the time, I guess he was one of the CEOs, although I'm not quite sure. But anyway, I took him out for afternoon tea because I was aware that people don't always treat sex workers with respect, especially people in very traditionally respectable industries. And I guess I wanted to shake his hand and be able to look him in the eye and make him see me as a person and treat me properly, because I guess I was aware on a sort of low-key level that I might not get treated with respect, and I wanted to do everything I could to ensure that I would be. Now, I don't think you should have to take anyone out for a meal in order to be treated with respect when you're doing your job. At the time, I didn't think I'd probably ever write another book. So this was my one chance to get my story told, get it noticed, and to work with some people outside my industry to do that, which felt really valuable to me. The meeting went absolutely fine. It was really nice. And I hoped I'd done everything I could to make sure that I would be treated fairly. The next small warning was that in the lead up to publication, so this would have been around May/June 2023, I was aware that for a lot of small publishing houses like Unbound, they had limited resources for publicity. I really wanted to give my book its best chance. So I asked Unbound, I asked my editor if I could take on a PR company or a publicist personally. Now I know this is a thing authors often do, but I didn't want to do it without their agreement because I certainly didn't want to stamp on any of their plans for the book. They confirmed that was absolutely fine, and so I went ahead with hiring a PR firm. I had agreed to spend £10,000 with this PR firm, and they had given me a detailed breakdown of all the opportunities they were going to try to get for me. Obviously, nothing is ever guaranteed, because if This Morning doesn't want me on their TV show, no PR company in the world can force them to, I'm guessing. But I felt really confident that they were going to give my book its best chance. But then Unbound told me that they were actually going to work with a separate agency, and that my book was one of the books that was going to receive the value of working with an outside PR company. So they asked me if I could either not work with the PR company I'd already taken on, or ask them to only take on my book once the contract with Unbound's PR was over, which would have been after publication. And I was quite dismayed because I'd committed £10,000 to this, and I had no confidence I'd make that money back quickly from my book, because I wasn't expecting my book to be a huge bestseller. I just really wanted it to have every chance that it could. And I'd not signed a contract to my PR people, but I'd made it very clear that I'd given them my word. I was paying them. And during the Zoom call I had with Unbound and the PR company that they were hiring, as I was feeling very pressurised to agree to give my PR company a diminished role, I did think, what sort of people would expect me to go back on my word? Having promised anyone money, I would never go back on paying them, ever. So in the end, we compromised. My PR company were allowed to look for live events for me, like speaking engagements, and they weren't allowed to look for press, TV, radio, podcast opportunities. And I didn't feel like I could renegotiate what I'd offered to pay them, because it wasn't their fault that they were suddenly not allowed to do so much. I just hoped it would work out. I hoped that the opportunities Unbound would find me would compensate for the fact that I'd spent this money on what would turn out to be a much more limited series of opportunities. As it was, my PR company ended up, I think I've got this right, they got me 4 opportunities live, so that cost me £2,500 each, and I can assure you that I did not make anything like that back in sales. Now, I can't say that's Unbound's fault necessarily, you know, for all I know, the publicists I chose are incredibly lazy. I don't know, I don't think so. But certainly I was in a much weaker position to ask what they were doing, having snatched away a lot of the things they had offered to do for me. And Unbound's PR people, to the best of my recollection, got me 2 opportunities. Now those opportunities were great. I got to write something in The Guardian, which I was really happy about, and I got to be interviewed in the Mail on Sunday, which then did lead on to some other opportunities. So people contacted me directly, having seen me in The Guardian or Mail on Sunday. So it's not like I didn't get anything, but given that I'd spent all that money, I ended up with less than 10 publicity opportunities from those 2 agencies. It certainly left me feeling like I'd slightly been pushed around, and as a first-time author I was very aware that I didn't want to annoy Unbound, my publisher, in case they didn't try so hard for me with my book. Anyway, my book was published, and it was lovely. I got really great reviews. People have been so generous. Once the rights reverted to me last year, I was able to do an audiobook version, which I own, so all the money from sales of that come directly to me, which is just as well because of what happened next. So I hadn't read my contract since I'd signed it back in 2022, so I didn't actually know when I'd get paid, and honestly it didn't matter very much to me. I knew I'd get paid eventually. I wasn't in this specific thing for money. I make money from my other businesses already. I run a property company and I'm a full-time professional model, and my turnover is something I'm very happy with. I never expected my publishing efforts to compete with either of those, and they haven't. And that's fine. I wrote it because I wanted my story to be told, and I wanted to help other people who are kinky and feel like they're alone. And as long as my book got out into the world, I would have achieved that. I just assumed eventually I would get a statement from them and then I would get paid. Unbound missed sending me the first statement I should have got, which was September 2023, just after my book had come out. And the payment that should have followed in November 2023 didn't turn up. But I didn't know, because I didn't know I should have been expecting it. Then they sent me the statement for March 2024, 6 months later. It arrived late and they apologised and said they'd got difficulties in the accounting department, so payment would be delayed. I didn't care at all because I hadn't expected any money at that point anyway. However, the statement didn't turn up, and by the time I got it after chasing them, it was June 2024. I should have been paid on June the 28th. So on July the 5th, I chased it up. On July the 12th, the publisher responded to me and told me they were waiting for funding from investors. I was worried because this money I was waiting for was money I'd already earned. It shouldn't have been contingent upon outside investors paying Unbound. It suggested to me that Unbound had spent the money that I had earned them already, and that did start to make me feel very anxious. I began to wonder if I could fully trust them. They, however, offered to add 10% to the total that I would be paid as an apology, and they said they'd pay it on the 16th of August. I chased it up on the 19th when it hadn't arrived, and again on the 23rd, then again on the 25th. At this point, I was contacting the publisher, the CEO at the time, and then eventually the accounts department as well, maybe the financial director at that point, and I got nothing. By the 25th of August, I'd spoken to Howell, finally, my husband, who had read my contract properly and who is better at reading than me generally. And he realised that I was owed a great deal more money than I'd realised because the first statement had never arrived and my first payment had never arrived. So I demanded the statement and full payment of the monies from both statements by the 31st of August. On the 2nd of September, the funds still had not arrived and I was completely out of patience, so I started the paperwork for taking them to court, and I told them that if they didn't pay me by 12 p.m. on the 2nd of September, I would launch my case. They paid with 2 hours, an hour and a half to go, and I just thought I will no longer trust them at all, and I will be very careful with tying up any more money in this venture. I certainly by this point knew that I would not publish a future book with Unbound. Anyway, then what happened? Well, in September, we should have got our next statement. Eventually, I did get it, and then I should have been paid that money at the end of November. I wasn't paid. And in December, my book was published in the USA. And sadly, I had no confidence by this point that taking on a publicist, which this time cost me £2,700, would help me at all, because however much publicity my US publicist could drum up about my book, if Unbound never paid me the money from those sales, I would have spent this money in vain, just adding to the amount of money I had spent on publicising the book when I had trusted Unbound to send me the funds that I had earned as a result. At the time of recording, I have no fucking idea at all how sales have gone for my book in the US. I've got no idea how much money my book has made since September 2024, which is a ridiculous situation to be in. At the time of recording this, it's the 17th of March 2025. On the 5th of January 2025, I notified Unbound of my intention to take my rights back, which would mean they no longer would have the right to sell my book and I would have the right to sell it myself, republish a different edition, sell the movie rights, do whatever the hell I wanted. They had 30 days to get back to me to solve the problem, so they were no longer in default, no longer owing me money. And they didn't, of course, so on the 3rd of February I requested that my rights revert. I formally sent in the paperwork for that. On the 4th of March, the rights formally reverted to me. I got a letter from Unbound. So I purchased all the unsold copies, which has cost me about £1,000. which right now I would rather not give to Unbound, but I have to stop my paper copies being pulped. So that is more money that I have spent getting my book into the public eye, and I'm not pleased about it, but at least I have the rights to my own work back. The fact that I've taken my rights back doesn't cancel out the debt they owe me. They still owe me all the money for all the time before my rights reverted to me. Whether or not I will get those ever is a whole other matter. I would probably at this point guess I will not get my money back. But I do have a book that I am super, super proud of that I can now sell. This was the 4th of March, and Howell said to me that when he was a particle physicist working internationally, some of his Eastern European colleagues who'd got out of what was going to be the USSR just before the Iron Curtain came down, they said you don't have to be early, you just have to be a day earlier than everyone else. And that's what I did, and I'm really glad because on the 10th of March, 6 days later, Unbound went into administration. So that means, as far as I can understand, because I am not an expert in this stuff, that essentially in this case it means that they no longer have an obligation legally to pay everything they owe to me and to other authors and to other freelancers. They can start up a new company, which they have, called Boundless, and they can retain the assets from the old company Unbound. They can keep the same personnel, they can keep the same CEOs, they can basically, if I've understood correctly, start off again without an obligation to look after the authors who made them the money, which they have now used for whatever the hell they have. I have no idea. We don't know. They haven't paid the authors, that much is clear. So I didn't do all of this in isolation. Once I started to realise there was a problem, I started reaching out to other Unbound authors, and what I discovered was absolutely disgusting, because actually I've not found a single author so far who I've spoken to who is not owed money, which I guess gives you some idea of the scale of the problem. Not only that, but some authors are owed thousands of pounds because some authors didn't threaten Unbound last year to get what they were owed at the time, so they might be owed a year and a half's money or possibly even 2 years' money, whereas I'm owed a few months of money. Once I started listening to their stories, I went from angry and upset to just furious. And I'm going to explain why it particularly matters to me, other than just these authors have written beautiful books and they have a lot of integrity. A lot of them have written books that come from a real sense of social conscience, and the idea of them being messed around like this is hideous to me. But the reason it matters to me personally is that as a sex worker, I've long been aware that we are not trusted by wider society. People do tend to expect us to rip them off, to take their money and not deliver the product, to be generally shoddy and unprofessional. And it's always mattered very much to me to be the opposite of what people expect. I am trustworthy. I've been in this business 21 years and I have never defaulted on anything. I pay my invoices on the day that I receive them. I have never not delivered to a customer, and I never will unless something terrible happens to me medically. On occasions where I've had to postpone a shoot, like in COVID, I have refunded everyone. My integrity and my reputation is extremely important to me. And when I started working with Unbound, I was very worried and very concerned that they should realise that they could trust me. I wanted to repay the faith that they put in me by being professional and reliable and trustworthy, not to miss any deadlines, not to flake out on anything, always to be on time for Zoom calls. Because I just wanted to reassure them that they could trust me, and it never occurred to me that I shouldn't be worried about whether they could trust me. I should have been worried about whether I could trust them, whether they were reliable and trustworthy and honest, because the answer, as far as I can see from their behaviour, is absolutely the fuck not. I'm very angry. I now very much feel like I have been used by part of the establishment, by this very respectable publishing company in a very respectable field. And for the other authors, they were still being told, just hold on, we are going to pay, we've just got more investors coming in, just wait a couple more weeks and we'll have a solution. And now it may be too late for them because the company is no more, and it may be true that the new company has no obligation legally to pay them what they are owed. Now, I did research Unbound before signing my contract. I looked for any blog posts by authors who were talking about their experience, any YouTube videos from authors sharing their experiences, and I didn't find anything bad at all. And that's why I'm making this video, because Unbound has relaunched as Boundless, and I want there to be a record on the internet for future authors who might be thinking of signing up with Boundless, because at least at the time of recording this, if you do, you'll be working with the exact same people who, at least for now, have not paid any of the authors from Unbound that I'm in contact with, which is a reasonably large number at this point. So I want this video to exist, to warn you, so that another hopeful, optimistic author who's written a story that matters to them will not get exploited and will not end up labouring for free for a fucking company full of people who are richer than them. I will update this video when everyone I'm in touch with, including myself, has been paid. Till then, I want this video to stay here on YouTube as a warning, because as it is, they're looking at being able to take our money, thousands and thousands of pounds from a number of authors, walk away and start again. God knows what they've done with that money, because there's plenty of it. I mean, I don't know if any of them have done without their salaries or dividends or whatever, but I feel suspicious that they probably are not struggling, and some of the authors I've spoken to are struggling in a very real, concrete sense, both emotionally and financially. It is disgusting to me. And maybe one of the reasons I'm talking about this is because I'm rich, and I'm not rich because of the publishing industry. I'm rich because of the porn industry, which I really feel has a lot more integrity by and large. I've never had an experience like this in 21 years of the porn industry. Some people have delayed payment, but they always have paid me. And it's very interesting to brush up against another industry and discover that it doesn't have the image problem of the porn industry, but it seems to be a whole lot more problematic. What an interesting thing to discover. I really thought that I was entering this respectable field, and it felt really nice. I thought, oh, maybe people will respect me now. You shouldn't respect me for being an author, because for now I've just been exploited by a bunch of people who are a great deal more socially privileged than me. And it does not make me feel good. Whereas Unbound are looking at being able to walk away, start again with our money. What's happened to the authors? I mean, the authors whose money Unbound has walked away with are in a hideous position, because all of their fans have already paid for this book, which now they may not get. The authors do not have that money, so they can't self-publish now. If their book is already published, they are looking at potentially seeing it sell really, really super well, with no confidence they will ever see any money as a result of those sales. And if they want to take their rights back and self-publish or offer it to another traditional publisher, the chances of them being able to build up much interest if the book has already been released, I think is surely greatly reduced. So for now, Unbound/Boundless say they will still pay us. Not because they have to, but because it's the right thing to do. But will they? I don't know. But this video will stay up until they have. And if they do pay, I'll make a video letting you know under what circumstances that happened and how helpful it ended up being to me and to the other authors. Now, I have been warned by several people that people within the publishing industry might not want to work with me on my next book if I spoke out about this. But I wonder what sort of people wouldn't want to work with someone who'd got the integrity to risk their reputation somewhat to speak out about an injustice. Well, I think the sort of people who wouldn't want to work with me for that are the sort of people I wouldn't want to work with. And having spent too much time and energy trying to convince Unbound that I was a safe pair of hands, I didn't consider whether they were a safe pair of hands. So now I think I'm going to use this video and the fact that I'm being open about this story to screen the sort of people who might want to work with me in the future, because if they are aware of this video and the fact that I've spoken out about this and they still want to work with me, then I shall think perhaps they're my kind of people, because I would like to never work again with a company that does not have integrity. And I'm very, very sorry to discover that a lot of my fans and supporters, many of whom will be watching this video, have actually had their money taken, used by Unbound, and it has not benefited me yet. I am so sorry, because it's hugely embarrassing to think that I have funded a company who then didn't use the money for what they said they were going to use it for. I feel like I've unknowingly exploited my fans who've been so generous to me, and all I can do is promise you I will be vigilant for future book deals. I will never let you down personally, financially. If you pay for something directly from me, you will always receive that, and if for some reason I can't provide it, I will refund you, and I will refund you speedily, because I'm not perfect. I'm not even especially agreeable, but I'm trustworthy. And I can't keep quiet about this when it might hurt future authors who are as hopeful and vulnerable and wanting the affirmation of being taken on by a respectable publisher as I was when I look back at the me of 2022 who signed my contract with Unbound. I'm so disappointed for her, and I'm so disappointed for the other authors who are in a much worse financial situation than me. Emotionally, I want to be paid what I'm owed. Practically, it doesn't actually matter because of your generosity in buying my work directly. But that said, I'm about to receive 1,000 paper copies of my book. So if you'd like some more copies, or if you'd like to buy my audiobook, that would be much appreciated, because I really would like to have at least broken even, which at the moment, because of the money I spent possibly unwisely on publicity, I have not yet broken even, because I spent money on publicity and I am currently owed money from Unbound. So that's the end of my video. If you are from Unbound/Boundless and you're watching this and you don't like it, then pay everyone. Thanks for listening, everybody who isn't Unbound/Boundless. I'll be back with more, hopefully cheerier stuff next month. In the meantime, I don't have colon cancer, which I found out 4 hours ago, which is great news. So I'm very hungry because I wasn't allowed to eat for 28 hours before the procedure. So I'm going to go and eat some Rice Krispies. And then my friend Lucy Lauren's about to arrive and I'm going to shoot some lovely customs with her. Thanks as always for joining me. Links to my book below, and I'll be back next month. Thank you as always. Goodbye now. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.